that Nicaragua actually requested. But the real question is who will be sitting in Panama's seat if and when that meeting takes place. There's a fight shaping up here. The new government down in Panama, the U.S.-supported government, has apparently appointed a new ambassador. It's a friend of the new president's. The newly appointed ambassador is named Eduardo Vallarino. Sorry about that. He's been up in Boston for the past year or so at the Harvard JFK School of Government. Now, he has apparently been appointed. His wife told CNN that the officials in Panama called him at around 4 in the morning and asked if he would be the new UN ambassador, and he flew down to New York. But the catch is that the Panamanian UN mission is apparently, we think, still in the hands of Noriega supporters. So we've got this fight shaping up. Now, at this point, the UN is apparently still recognizing the old ambassador, but when a UN spokesman was bombarded with questions on the subject, he had this to say.
The situation is very confused at the moment, and I will not answer any more questions on it.
And one more sign of the confusion. Earlier this morning when I called the Panamanian mission, at least I got someone to answer the phone. When I called a half hour or so, it rang and rang and rang and rang. The confusion is definitely there. I'm Judy Mose reporting live from the United Nations.
We will continue to follow that story throughout the rest of the day. Bernie?
And we have a story that's quite similar in nature, Ralph. At the Organization of American States this afternoon here in Washington, the United States strongly defended its actions against General Noriega, but Panama's ambassador, Jose Maria Cabrera, condemned the United States military action, and he called for the immediate withdrawal of all attacking U.S. forces. And he denounced the swearing-in of opposition leader Guillermo Endara as the country's popularly elected president.
We, under no circumstance, will accept some supposed leaders who are puppets imposed by the government of the United States and who are under the protection within a United States military installation in Panama because they know that they will not be able, under any circumstance, be accepted by a worthy Panamanian, by no Panamanian worthy of that name.
The situation in Panama under Noriega had become unsustainable. 35,000 citizens of the United States live in Panama. Their lives were seriously endangered. The integrity of the Panama Canal treaties was at risk, and this as the result of the pressures, the abuses, and yes, the force of a government run by a man who is indicted for drug running in 2 U.S. federal courts and who has thwarted the will of the people of Panama clearly expressed through elections.
Also at the Organization of American States here in Washington today, Nicaragua submitted a draft resolution condemning the United States military operation. It calls for the withdrawal of U.S. troops, and it reaffirms that no state has the right to interfere or use military force against another country. The OAS has recessed now until 6 p.m. Eastern Time for further consideration of that resolution. When we return on the International Hour, a live interview with the former Assistant Secretary of State, Elliott Abrams. Pain, not just for the Bush administration, but for the Reagan administration before it. The team surrounding former President Reagan imposed sanctions on Panama, hoping economic pressure would unseat the military leader. Joining us now, Elliott Abrams, who served as Assistant Secretary of State for Inter-American Affairs in the Reagan administration. When you were in office, some people regarded you as a zealot in your desire to see Manuel Noriega dumped. How do you feel right now?
Well, if there weren't a sad side to it, I guess I'd say vindicated. I remember the days when I proposed putting an opposition radio station on a U.S. base in Panama, and people in the Pentagon denounced me as a reckless zealot and talked about harebrained schemes. A year and a half later, we got 20,000 troops going in. I wish that we had done more sooner, done it in the Reagan administration, because I think it might have been possible to avoid some of the violence that we have today.
Done more, such as?
Well, I think that in the middle of '88, there was a lot of momentum against Noriega, and I think a little bit of a push, not violent push, mostly psychological operations against him, might well have given the opposition enough to get rid of him. I think it might have been possible to get rid of him in October at the time of the coup, on October 3rd of this year. And it would have been better had it been possible to do it essentially through Panamanians.
What was the opposition in the Pentagon? What kind of opposition was it?
What the Pentagon said at that point was that there would be needless violence, that if you kind of took a little bit of a pin into Noriega, then he would fight back against American civilians or against the canal or against American servicemen. And we could avoid this violence. And I would have to say that in retrospect, of course, we couldn't avoid the violence. We ultimately had to force Noriega out, and the question was, what's the best way to force him out?
Was this the Vietnam syndrome again? People not wanting to commit American troops unless the electorate supported it as well as the Congress? Was that the attitude in the Pentagon?
I think that was part of it. I think part of it is justified, too, the sense that if the operation went badly, it would be the soldiers left holding the bag and the civilians would all walk away. There was that fear. But I think part of it was too much of a desire to avoid any confrontation with Noriega. And I believed then that ultimately we would have a confrontation with Noriega. We were in a confrontation with Noriega once we indicted him. The question was who was going to win. And I think by delaying it, we have made it necessary for the president, and I think his decision was absolutely correct. But we have gotten him into the situation where he had no choice but to use a larger amount of force to get rid of Noriega.
Based on what you know about Noriega, based on what you know about Panama City, where do you think he is right now?
He can't really go too many places outside the country. I don't know who'd take him except probably Cuba. I suspect he's someplace in the jungle, probably in the northern part of the country, trying to figure out how to get out of the country. You know, at this point, a place like Cuba or Libya would be a safer place for him than where he is now. But it isn't so easy to fly out now. I would suspect that one of the reasons we closed the airspace down early was to prevent him from flying out. If he didn't have a plane instantly ready last night, then he's probably still there someplace. And I think there are enough disloyal people, disloyal to him, so that we may be able to turn him up.
And one would presume that AWACS or similar kinds of aircraft can see all over Panama and can see what takes off on the ground down there.
Can see that, and I would think also that we have some capability to, if he's doing radio communications, to listen to some of those.
Berta Thayer, CNN's correspondent in Panama City, reported that the national radio went silent as of 12:31 this afternoon, and that's significant. Question, if you were President Daniel Ortega of Nicaragua, would you accept Manuel Noriega?
No. Ortega has already lost from his association with Noriega, and he'd be smarter, I hate to give him advice, but he'd be smarter, as would anybody, to keep this pariah away. This guy he's not just a dictator, he's a thug, he's a criminal, he's a drug trafficker, and any country that takes him is going to be demeaned by doing so.
You call him a thug, a criminal, and a drug trafficker. Why did the Panamanian people put up with this so long?
That's a very good question. Part of it, of course, is fear. But I think we also have to look further back into Panamanian history. We created Panama. For a long time, Panama had no indigenous political life. It was run largely by the U.S. Embassy, the Panama Canal Commission, and it took a long time for people in Panama to get an internal political life going. When the Philippines and Haiti were throwing out their dictators, you still had just about dead silence in Panama. It took a long time.
Elliot Abrams, you seem very satisfied this afternoon.
Well, I am troubled that by waiting this long, it required more violence than I think it would have and more loss of life. But the president did very much the right thing. We had to get rid of Noriega. The president did it.
Elliot Abrams, former Assistant Secretary of State for Inter-American Affairs in the Reagan administration. Thank you.
You're welcome.
The International Hour. We'll be right back.
I had a cesarean section, and I was concerned about taking any medication because I was nursing my son. The hospital staff gave me Tylenol. I felt it was important that it was safe enough to take while I was nursing.
Carol Hodges trusts Tylenol, the pain reliever hospitals use most. If nursing, consult your doctor before use.
I know I can trust Tylenol because it was given to me by a doctor that I trust.
Now try new gelatin-coated gel caps, only from Tylenol.
Introducing the counter-rotating bristle action of Plaque Track, the home plaque removal system by Windmere. Your toothpaste works with Plaque Track, cleaning tooth surfaces, brushing between teeth, and under the gum line. Plaque Track features cordless convenience and a recharger storage base. 2 easily attached brush heads are also included. Use Plaque Track with a program of good dental hygiene and regular professional care. Available now at a store near you.
Get it, boys!
Isn't there someone you know who could use a skill twist this Christmas? The skill twist. The practical gift for practically anybody.
Now get the Christian Science Monitor, the Pulitzer Prize-winning daily newspaper for 1 month free when you order 2 months at just $9 per month. Call now and get a bonus month absolutely free. Call 1-800-257-1257 now.
Today, U.S. troops invade Panama and casualties are reported. Will Manuel Noriega be captured? For complete reports plus world reaction, stay with CNN.
CNN would like your opinion on the U.S. action against Panama. If you approve of the attack, call this number, 1-900-720-6122. If you do not approve of the attack, call this number, 1-900-720-6111. Call to either number will cost you 50 cents. Now, this is the response we've had so far. 91% of the callers approve of the U.S. attack on Panama. Only 9% do not approve. But let us know what you think. We'll be back in just a moment.
What's wrong, Vince?
My woman's done left me, my dog ran away, and people still aren't wearing their safety belts.
Aw, Vince, you singing those buckle up blues again?
Some people don't wear their seat belts. I can't believe it's true. Those kind of people get knocked right out of their shoes. So buckle up, baby. Don't sing me those buckle up blues.
You could learn a lot from a dummy. Buckle your safety belt.
I mean it, baby. Buckle, honeysuckle, buckle, yeah.
It's here, now on video cassette. Batman. Call toll-free and we'll send this Batman video to your door for just $19.99 plus shipping and handling.
What are you?
I'm Batman.
Get those wonderful toys.
Wait till they get a load of me.
Batman on video cassette for just $19.99. Call now and this Batman pin is yours free.
Season's greetings from all of us at CNN.
Time now to check this day's financial news headlines in New York. Here's Jan Hopkins. Jan?
Thanks, Bernie. Cautious trading on Wall Street today as investors try to piece together information from the military invasion in Panama. The blue chips have been trading in a narrow range for most of the day. Right now on the big board, the Dow is off 3.42 at 2692.19. Volume 166 million shares. Declining issues slightly ahead of advancing issues. New York Stock Exchange Composite Index up 0.15. The S&P 500 Index up 0.38. The American Stock Exchange Index is up 0.04. And the NASDAQ Index of over-the-counter stocks up 1.57. The Treasury's 30-year bellwether bond is down 1/32, selling at 103 and 6/32. The yield is 7.83%, and federal funds are 8 and 5/16%. In New York foreign exchange trading, the dollar mixed up a fraction of a yen against the Japanese currency, but off 2/3 of a pfennig against the West German mark and down almost 3/4 of a cent against the British pound. Precious metals settled higher on the New York Commodity Exchange. Gold up $1.40 an ounce to $417.50 an ounce. Silver gaining 2 cents to $5.65 an ounce. U.S. oil futures shot higher today on news the Panama Canal was closed to commercial traffic. Unusually cold weather has been rallying the oil markets the past week. Right now, profit-taking has erased earlier gains and sent oil prices lower in late trading. Right now, a barrel of West Texas Intermediate crude is down 5 cents to $21.23 a barrel. Swedish Match is selling all of its disposable lighter and razor business in a series of transactions worth an estimated $672 million. As part of that deal, Match will sell its Wilkinson razor and blade business outside the European community to Gillette. Price tag $72 million. Gillette controls about 63% of the U.S. blade and razor market, while Wilkinson had about a 2% share. That is the latest in business news, with the Dow now down 2 3/4 points. I'm Jan Hopkins from the CNN Business News Desk in New York. We'll have another report in 1 hour.
Thank you, Jan. Coming up on the CNN World Report next, more coverage of the situation in Panama with Ralph Winge.
At 0400, the fleet was ordered to come about facing the wind. The pilots prayed to their gods and to their emperor.
Welcome to CNN World Report. In this portion of the International Hour, we bring you the news as reported by broadcasters around the globe, uncensored and without editorial comment. As the news of the U.S. intervention in Panama reached Latin America today, leaders scrambled to react. The foreign ministers of 7 Latin American countries agreed to hold an emergency meeting in Colombia this evening to discuss the U.S. action. Nicaragua was quick to condemn the U.S. intervention, put its army on alert, and called for a meeting of the UN Security Council. Maria Palais of Nicaragua's SSTV joins us now by phone from Managua for the latest on the Nicaraguan reaction. Maria?
Yes, I just want to reiterate that, yes, the Nicaraguan government has indeed condemned the invasion, although it doesn't feel that the Panamanian invasion is a premonition that a similar thing may happen in Nicaragua. It has decided to declare a state of national alert, which is not the same thing as a state of emergency. The state of alert means that there's an increase in military readiness nationwide. Combat troops have been mobilized to key areas of the countries. The reserve and the popular militias have been notified to be on the alert, waiting for orders from the Supreme Defense Council. But state of alert does not mean that civil rights are suspended, as they would in a state of emergency. So the electoral process is continuing here.
This feeling, Maria, that troops are going to move from Panama into Nicaragua, is this a feeling just of the government, or is it a feeling also of the people of the country?
That U.S., say that again, that troops are going to move from where to where?
Well, if there was a general feeling that the next step for U.S. troops, and that was the fear in Nicaragua, that they're going to move into Nicaragua. Is that a fear shared by the people?
Well, what I just told you is that it's not a fear. It is just a precaution that the government has taken, given the history of intervention from the U.S. government in Nicaragua and in various parts of the country. What is important to remember is that regardless of what the reasons are for this invasion, in Latin America, this brings back bad memories, dark memories of the ugly America. It wouldn't be at all surprising if people start rushing to the streets to burn U.S. flags. This will certainly revive dormant anti-Yankeeism in Latin America. You know, the bad guy with a big stick.
And what does this do to Ortega now?
Well, Ortega is waiting, basically, as I said. Ortega is not doing anything other than just waiting to see what happens. It has put the country on a military alert. But everybody is continuing with their normal course of events. Consensus point was reached yesterday on the elections between the police and the Supreme Electoral Council. What's possible is that the attention will be heightened in the region, and that therefore the electoral climate might also get more heated.
All right, the view from Nicaragua. Maria Palais is with Nicaragua's SSTV. Now, Cuba accused the United States of showing contempt for international law by invading Panama. Cuban radio is reporting that hundreds of Cubans assembled outside the U.S. naval base in Guantanamo in eastern Cuba to protest U.S. action in Panama. For more on those demonstrations and the perspective from Havana, here's Cuba Vision.
This morning, just before noon, the Cuban Foreign Ministry issued an official declaration denouncing the American invasion of Panama. In it, the ministry accuses the Americans of using the same pretext that was used in the invasions of Santo Domingo and Grenada, which was to establish democracy and order and to protect American lives. But the real reason for this invasion, claims the ministry, is that the Americans do not want to give up the Panama Canal. In Cuba, hundreds of young people have gathered in front of what used to be the American embassy and is now the intersection, with slogans and flags supporting the people in Panama against the American invasion. All of Cuba seems to be in a state of alert, and the whole country is following the events in Panama very closely. The latest information that Cuba has received from its correspondent in Panama is that General Noriega is leading the defense against the American attack from some unknown location inside the country. He has said he will not surrender and that the people of Panama will resist. There are unconfirmed reports that an American helicopter has been shot down and that the Americans are not allowing the Red Cross to enter the bombed areas. The declaration issued by the Cuban Foreign Ministry ends by calling on international support for the people of Panama and its legitimate government. In Havana, this is Maria Flores from Cuba Visión for CNN World Report.
At the same time, there are other Latin American countries, of course, that have not been so quick to condemn the U.S. action. And joining us now by phone to discuss Costa Rica's reaction, Pilar Cisneros of Canal 7. Pilar?
Yes, good afternoon. Widespread reaction against the U.S. invasion to Panama was registered in many Latin American countries. The Venezuelan government said in an official declaration that invasions are no longer valid in international relations. On the other hand, the Colombian Foreign Minister, Julio Londoño, said he will try to organize an emergency meeting with representatives of the Central American and South American countries to analyze the situation in Panama. Nicaragua, by the way, was trying to gain more opposition against the U.S. invasion to Panama, but so far no response to this attempt has been registered. Here in Costa Rica, Foreign Minister Rodrigo Madrigal said that Costa Rica has always opposed General Noriega's regime, but that they cannot agree with a violent action against him. It is believed that General Noriega could stop in Costa Rica on his way to Cuba or Nicaragua. General Noriega has several farms near the Costa Rican border, so it is possible that he will use them to get into Costa Rica if he decides to abandon Panama. The Costa Rican authorities are not ignoring this possibility, but there is still no official word on how will Costa Rica react if Noriega stops here. Civil guards are reinforcing the Costa Rican border to keep order and to be prepared in the event that the Panamanian forces attempt to cross into Costa Rica.
Pilar, thank you very much. Pilar Cisneros is with Costa Rica's Canal 7. And when CNN World Report returns, the Soviet Union accuses the United States of practicing gunboat diplomacy by invading Panama.
Ordered. Will Manuel Noriega be captured? For complete reports plus world reaction, stay with CNN.
As we mentioned a moment ago, the leaders of 7 Latin American nations will be meeting in Bogota, Colombia tonight to discuss the developments in Panama. The countries are members of the so-called Group of 8. Panama was the 8th member of that group until last year, when it was excluded because of General Manuel Noriega's actions. For more on tonight's meeting, as well as Colombia's reaction to the day's events, we have this report from TV Hoy.
Very early in the morning, Colombian President Virgilio Barco contacted by phone the other presidents of the Latin American countries to call for a meeting in Bogota today. He wants to make a declaration about American actions in Panama. Barco already contacted the governments of Argentina, Venezuela, Costa Rica, Mexico, and Peru. This afternoon will arrive to Bogota the state secretaries of those countries. In the surveys released by the radio stations in Bogota, the Colombians vote 40% agree with the American military action and 60% against Bush's decision. Many of the Colombians show afraid with these actions because this can be just a pretext of one attack to the drug dealers. This morning, rumors say that General Noriega has flew to San Andres, a Colombian island in the Caribbean, but late this news was denied. A military source says that maybe it's possible that Noriega has flew to Panamanian border at the jungle, but Colombian has not sent troops yet. Few minutes ago, the Colombians knew that President of Peru, Alan Garcia, asked to cancel the meeting with President Bush in Cartagena next February as a protest to the American actions in Panama. The Colombian government has not made any comment yet.
Because Colombia is so close in proximity to Panama, Colombian journalists have been covering the story with a particular interest. Olga Fernandez of Colombia's TV Hoy joins us now by phone to discuss the breaking story. Olga, what are you hearing on there as far as what we can expect out of tonight's meeting?
Well, as you have said, the state secretaries of 7 countries of the Group of the 8 are going to be here in Bogota today discussing the situation of Panama. People think that in that meeting they are going to be against the military actions in Panama. However, people in Latin America doesn't like General Miguel Antonio Noriega because everybody knows that he is a drug trafficking leader.
Olga, is there, first of all, tell me, is there any idea of what they can do? They're going to have the meeting, they're going to discuss it. What's likely to come out of it?
Well, everybody thinks that they are going to make just a declaration, like an official declaration of the Group of the 8. In this declaration, they are going to say what does this country think about and what they are going to do in this situation. We doesn't know anything here in Bogota about if there is something specific or clear they have yet.
Olga, is there reason to believe down there, or is there any fear that perhaps U.S. troops are going to make their next stop into Colombia because of the drug problem there?
Well, people in Colombia feel scared because they have noticed how easy and how quickly Americans can make military actions in Latin America. People in the streets say always, well, maybe tomorrow is our turn, just because they think that we are not working to finish the illegal traffic of drugs. That's what people say in the streets, that they are not so much agree with that action, but we don't feel so much scary to think that tomorrow American troops are going to be here.
All right, Olga, thank you for that report. Olga Fernandez is with Colombia's TV Hoy. Now, the Soviet Union was quick to condemn U.S. action in Panama using harsh language that hasn't been heard recently in this time of improved U.S.-Soviet relations. The official Soviet news agency TASS called the invasion an example of notorious gunboat diplomacy. And this evening's Vremya newscast from Moscow was just as harsh. Here's how Soviet television reported the story.
Last night, the sky over Panama was lit up by cannon fire. The U.S. invaded Panama. The intervention, backed by the U.S. Air Force, was executed by the U.S. forces located in the area, together with the 82nd Division from South Carolina. This is the same division which invaded Grenada 6 years ago. The main target of the operation was the headquarters of the Defense Forces of Panama, and the aim was to capture the chief of the Defense Forces, General Manuel Noriega. The whole day long, there was terrible fighting in the streets of the capital between the invaders and the National Defense Forces of Panama. As always, in the official statements by U.S. spokesmen, there was no lack of justification, such as the safety of American citizens and the reconstruction of the democratic process in Panama. Eloquence of the Washington official was so sophisticated that he even managed to mention that the aim of the operation was to create the best conditions for the execution of the Panama Canal Treaty. History repeats itself. It is easy to understand that the real reason for the invasion is not the safety of U.S. citizens in Panama, but the desire of Washington to prevent handing over the canal to Panama in the year 2000, and to keep the U.S. military bases on the territory of this country. In ensuring this, Washington violated basic international laws and shed blood on the streets of Panama. This report released by Soviet television to the CNN World Report.
And going back to Latin America now, in the past, Venezuela has spearheaded attempts in the Organization of American States to issue strong condemnations of the Noriega regime to pressure him to leave. Well, today, Venezuela offered a qualified endorsement of the U.S. action, acknowledging that force was needed, but condemning the ongoing presence of U.S. troops in the region. Venevisión has the story.
Venezuela and Panama have had good relations in the past, sharing the same objective as Simón Bolívar, with his fight for the independence of a people under colonial rule. Later, Panama separated from Colombia, but Venezuela has recognized Colombia's independence and maintained good relations. As years go by and several de facto governments Manuel Noriega comes to power. But Noriega has lost perspective, to the point of ignoring the will of the people of Panama to have a democratically elected president. Today, before the U.S. intervention in the Central American country, the Venezuelan government, which always respects democratic means, condemned Noriega's pretense to act as chief of Panama. But at the same time, Venezuela repudiates U.S. intervention because it is believed that this type of action should have been outgrown a long time ago. The government of Venezuela has also stated that North American troops should be withdrawn from Panamanian soil to allow for the legitimate government of Guillermo Endara and his own defense forces. As for reaction from members of the Panamanian government in our country, as of late this morning, the media was unable to get any information because there was no one at the offices of the Panamanian embassy. This report prepared by Venevision for the CNN World Report.
And that's it for today's edition of CNN World Report. Be sure to join us again tomorrow as we bring you the news as reported by broadcasters around the globe.
Time now to check the weather across the United States and around the world. In Atlanta, here's Flip Spiceland. Flip?
Thanks, Bernie. Bitter cold temperatures really sums it up for the eastern two-thirds of the nation, and I mean bitter cold. Last night there were temperatures in the upper Midwest as cold as 20 or 30 below, and I'm not talking about wind chills. Those were the actual temperatures. Temperatures in single digits sliding all the way down into the southern plain states. Indeed, throughout the remainder of the week, we're going to see temperatures in the single digits as far south as North Texas, and in fact, for cities in the south, the worst is yet to come. Now, oddly enough, despite the fact it was so very, very cold last night, indeed the coldest night of the season, there were fewer record-setting cold temperatures last night, only 5 or 6 compared to 10 or 15 that we've been seeing over the last couple of nights. There is no major snowstorm on the map today. I guess that's the good news, although we are seeing a rather heavy lake effect snow, and that's going to continue. A light snow in the northern Rockies and some of that reaching into the plain states. Let's take a look at the CNN color radar and show you where it is snowing right now. This is the snow in the northern Rockies. This is some of the lake effect snow that we had mentioned. There's rain in Florida. That cold air is trying to push into the very warm air of South Florida. Let's take a look at our forecast weather map. For tomorrow, there's the heavy lake effect snow that will continue. Light snow in the Rockies. Some of it will reach in the plain states, and look for the showers to continue in Florida. But the basic weather problem will be the bitter cold temperatures. Now back to Bernie in Washington.
Thank you, Flip. And when the International Hour returns, we'll be talking live by telephone with an American who has just been released by the security forces there at the Marriott Hotel in Panama City. That coming up next.
On December 17, 1985, President Reagan authorized the minting of the biggest and heaviest silver dollar in our nation's history, the Walking Liberty silver dollar, struck from hand-engraved dies based on Adolph Weinmann's famous design. These brilliant, newly minted, uncirculated coins contain 1 ounce of solid silver capturing the spirit of America with the Walking Liberty. National Minting Distribution Center in Washington, D.C., one of the nation's leading private numismatic marketing services, has set aside a number of these coins. They are now being offered to the general public along with a certificate of authenticity for each order, attesting to the coin's uniqueness as genuine, newly minted, official U.S. government uncirculated silver dollars. Truly a collector's item for every American. Our price for each coin is only $25 plus $3 shipping and handling per coin. Due to the constant fluctuation in the price of silver on the world market and the extremely strong demand, we only guarantee this initial offering price for a period of 10 days. And since the market price can go up or down, we urge you to order now by charging to your major credit card. Ask the operator for quantity discount prices. Marvel at the fine detail of these uncirculated silver dollars. And if for any reason you're not completely satisfied, return your silver dollars within 30 days for a full refund. Our price for each coin is only $25. But remember, there is a strict limit of 100 coins per order, and we only guarantee this price for 10 days, so call now.
TNT's social event of the season. Lauren Bacall, Harry Hamlin, Charles Durning, Marsha Mason, John Mahoney, and Ellen Green in Dinner at 8. Thursday at 8 Eastern on TNT.
Now, quickly, live by telephone to Panama City, on the line, an American who does not want to be identified, who was just released a short while ago there at the Marriott Hotel. What happened? Who grabbed you? And how were you released?
We were grabbed, about 20 of us, in 3 different sections of the Marriott at about 1 o'clock this morning. by approximately 8 gentlemen dressed in dark civilian clothing and wearing ski masks. They were carrying AK-47s, Uzis, 9mm, and law rocket launchers.
What did they say to you, and what did they do to you?
Well, some of the people, they just pushed into a line. The most dramatic incident occurred in the nightclub where I was at, where as soon as they came in, they fired their weapons, forcing everyone down on their hands and knees to crawl out into the lobby.
Was anyone
injured?
injured?
They then started requesting that all Americans stand up out of the people laying down. One nice thing to be said about all the Panamanian people that were laying with me on the floor is that none of them made one move to turn me in, although a lot of them knew that I was an American.
And what were the circumstances of your release, sir?
I'm sorry, Bernie?
What were the circumstances of your release? How did you get away?
They brought us, they took us in a van with our heads down out of the Marriott. They brought us to some house somewhere, keeping us there for approximately 4.5 hours. No talking was permitted, sitting on the floor in very close quarters with legs crossed. And then, just like magic, they said, okay, we're leaving. And,
did you walk into the arms of American military personnel when you left this building?
No, around the Marriott, there are no American military personnel to be seen.
No, I mean once you were released from this house where you were taken.
No, this house was not far away from the Marriott.
Okay.
We were going to go back to the Marriott, but we met people that told us that it was still unsafe. They were still grabbing Americans, as they are right now.
Okay, we only have a few seconds, but I need to know how many Americans were in your group, and are they okay physically?
I only know about the 2 that are left with me.
Mm-hmm.
The others went off in different directions. They took us out of the house in different cars.
Okay, thank you for joining us.
I have no idea what happened to the other ones.
Okay, thanks for your information. Thanks for joining us on the line. Be careful. That's all for this edition of the International Hour. In Washington, I'm Bernard Shaw.
And at CNN Center in Atlanta, I'm Ralph Winke. Next, continued coverage of the unfolding situation in Panama.
Bush and Gorbachev meet in Malta, and CNN is there live.
If a meeting can improve relations, I think this one has.
Germany celebrates freedom, and CNN has the story live.
I just can't believe it.
I'm happy. I have been dreaming of this for years.
Social revolution sweeps China, and CNN captures the drama live.
The assault on Tiananmen Square is now underway.
I came to cover a summit. I walked into a revolution.
Earthquake shatters Northern California, and CNN reports live.
The Bay Area is in aftershock.
CNN International goes beyond the headlines, capturing life as it happens, delivering the news live. CNN International, global television news, 24 hours a day.
A viewer's guide to headline news. The fastest, most accurate news anywhere. Every half hour begins with top stories. At 15 after, dollars and cents. At 20 after the hour, sports. and at 25 after People, Places, and Things. Headline News, every half hour, 24 hours a day. Headline News, anytime, all the time.
Season's greetings from all of us at CNN.
What assurances do you have that Noriega isn't going to escape into the countryside and organize some kind of guerrilla operations to keep harassing the U.S. forces down there?
Oh, he can do that, and we will chase him and we'll find him.
But 15 hours into the offensive, U.S. troops have yet to get their hands on General Manuel Noriega, one of the main reasons for today's attack in Panama. Welcome to Newsday for Wednesday, December 20th. I'm Don Miller.
And I'm Susan Rook with more on our top story. General Manuel Noriega, who has eluded and confounded U.S. presidents for years, continues to stay outside the grasp of the U.S. military. But the Pentagon is hoping some 24,000 paratroopers, infantry forces, and Army Rangers may finally catch up with him. And Secretary of State James Baker says the man who was yesterday's maximum leader is today's hunted fugitive. Baker warned, however, that the situation is still not settled in Panama, although U.S. troops control Panamanian defense posts in and around Panama City. And Operation Just Cause is in the mopping up stages. Witnesses say artillery and helicopter fire is echoing through the streets of the Panamanian capital, and there are reports of looting by civilians in the city's business district. Most of the looters were poor people from the city's slums. Several Americans, some from the Marriott Hotel, have been detained by Panamanian troops in the fighting. So far, the Pentagon reports 11 soldiers have died in combat. Another 59 were wounded. One is listed as missing. One civilian dependent also was killed. Soldiers wounded in the Panama attack were being flown to Kelly Air Force Base near San Antonio, Texas. Soldiers began arriving just before noon, and Army doctors at nearby Brooke Army Medical Center are on standby to helping treating the casualties. Today's assault on Panama's defense force began in the middle of the night, about 1 a.m. Eastern Time, 1 a.m. Panama time, and continued through dawn. Attack jets bombed military targets, and helicopters and planes strafed military installations. Early this morning, President Bush went on television to justify today's attack. He says Noriega's reckless threats and attacks on Americans provoked the need to protect American lives. And Secretary of State Baker says intelligence reports indicated Noriega planned commando raids on residential neighborhoods housing Americans. The president says today's attack was a last resort after diplomatic efforts failed.
Tragically, some Americans have lost their lives in defense of their fellow citizens, in defense of democracy. And my heart goes out to their families. We also regret and mourn the loss of innocent Panamanians.
U.S. troops blocked off Panamanian defense forces at Fort Amador and secured the airport and other military posts. As many as 50 Panamanian civilians reportedly have been killed, caught in the crossfire. But there are no casualty numbers for the Panamanian Army. One of the key targets in today's attack was Noriega's headquarters. This afternoon, smoke was still seen rising from its burnt-out shell, and there are reports Noriega is still directing his troops to fight on. Meanwhile, the man who many say won May's presidential elections, Guillermo Endara, was sworn into that post today. Noriega had voided the election results and thwarted Endara's assumption of power. The White House says Endara has spoken out to urge Panamanians to stay home during the fighting. Endara and his vice president reportedly are lying low for their own protection.
Despite the casualties and despite the fact that Noriega has not been captured, the Pentagon is calling its attack on Panama a success. CNN's John Holloman is covering the developments in Panama from the Pentagon. He joins us now live with the latest. John?
Don, the Army's Deputy Chief of Staff for Operations is preparing to talk to reporters here and give us an update on what's happened on the ground in the past several hours. The Pentagon continues to say troops in Panama are mopping up after their early morning attack on Noriega's People Defense Force soldiers, his headquarters, and those other positions which you just saw. Defense Secretary Dick Cheney says today's invasion was conducted only after other measures failed.
We, as a government, bent over backwards to avoid having to take military action. I think the record is replete with patience and forbearance of the United States government in this instance. When it reached the point, however, when it was clear that American lives were at risk, when it reached the point where it was clear that General Noriega had created an environment in which his troops felt free to terrorize and brutalize Americans who had every legitimate and lawful right to be in Panama, that was a fundamentally different set of circumstances.
The Pentagon says 11 military personnel and 1 female military dependent have been killed in the fighting so far. 59 people have been wounded. There's another person listed as missing. Marine Corporal Gareth Isaac from D Company of the 2nd Light Armored Infantry Battalion at Rodman Naval Base in Panama, home based at Camp Lejeune, North Carolina, was killed in the fighting today. The assault man was 23 years old. John Holloman, CNN Live at the Pentagon.
Secretary of State James Baker also is calling the attack on Panama a success. Baker called a news conference this afternoon for an update. CNN World Affairs correspondent Ralph Begleiter has the latest from the State Department. Ralph?
The Bush administration believes it is justified in its military intervention in Panama under international law, which allows for self-defense. Secretary of State James Baker says the shooting and beating incidents against American servicemen since last Saturday were compounded by a threat he says was received by the U.S. of an alleged commando attack against American civilians in a residential neighborhood of Panama. Baker also makes the case that the Panamanian leaders who were elected last May approved of the U.S. military move after those officials were sworn in at an American military base.
In taking the actions that we've taken, we consulted the legitimate, democratically elected government of Panama, which welcomed our actions.
The United States is the object of some cool international reaction. Aside from the Soviet Union criticizing the use of force by the United States, even friendly Canada says the use of force sets a dangerous precedent. Canadian Prime Minister Mulroney agreed, however, the U.S. acted properly in responding to threats against U.S. citizens.
The reactions from foreign governments that have been communicated to us have been mixed. They're pretty much about what we expected. Some